Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Clouds and very nice to meet you. So today I want to talk about flat renting in London and what it's like to go apartment hunting and all the different tips and tricks that I've learned over the past 5 to 6 years now that I've lived in London. And I guess I've built a little bit of an arsenal of information in terms of what I think is like the best way to go about flat hunting and how to find the best deals and what, you know, the process looks like, and just a couple of tips that have really saved me in the past and saved me a lot of money, saved me hassle, saved me time and effort. So of course I thought I'd share those with you guys. Before I start, I would like to say that if you guys enjoy this kind of video and other rental flat hunting tips in London, then please give this video a like. That will let me know that you guys actually enjoy this kind of content and I'll post more of it. So yeah, try to signal to me what you guys like, because this is kind of like a demand and supply situation. I'm trying to get to know what you guys like. So I think the first thing that I want to cover is rent and rent prices. Of course, I think it's like the #1 thing that people think about when it comes to flat hunting and finding a house and moving to London. It's like, how much am I gonna have to pay to rent a flat? Now, London is known for being an area that is very, very expensive to live in. We all know this. Everyone around the world knows this. I feel like there's only a couple of places that could combat London when it comes to rent prices, you know, San Francisco, Hong Kong, etc. But if we delve into the numbers, it seems like there's kind of a disparity in terms of what the actual average rent is. And I feel like the reason is because some people consider other zones as part of London, which obviously decreases the average value. Some people only calculate based on what zone 1 is. So according to HomeLet, the average rental value for new tenancies in London is £1,752 a month. That is a lot of money. This is also based on 2021 data. However, according to Spare Room, the average rent in London on average is £729 per month, and this is also per person. So that's a huge difference. Obviously £700 a month is very different to £1,700 a month. But again, I do think that these averages were calculated based on different figures, but in my personal experience, I feel like the average rent in London is probably around £800 to £1,000 a month. And I feel like that's a good average, especially if you're a student or a young adult. I expect you to pay around that price. And actually, when I was in uni, my rent was around £620 a month. So definitely quite cheap. Obviously, I'm not a student anymore, so I pay a little bit more. I did post a video of like flat hunting experience in London, and I chose one of the places from that video, which is where I'm living right now. And me and my flatmates pay on average around £800 a month per person. But I'd say for most of my friends who are young professionals working like in banking, consulting, etc., people who are like 1 to 3 years out of uni, we pay around, let's say, £800 a month to £900 a month. I feel like that's a really good average. Of course, it's more expensive if you want to live alone. So if you want to live in a 1-bed, it's gonna be above 1,000. It's gonna be extremely hard for you to find something below £1,000, especially if you want something decent. But yes, that is what I would say is the average price of renting in London, at least from my experience and from the people that I know. Of course, there are outliers on both sides. I do know a lot of friends who pay like £2,000 a month or over that, and I also know a lot of friends who pay like £600 a month, even when they're like young adults. So there's definitely a spectrum. But the next thing I'll say when it comes to renting in London is very related to what I just described in the prices, but you need to understand the zones very well. So zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, etc. Also, by the way, if you're new to London and if you don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about zones are the way people basically categorize each layer of London. Zone 1 being the most core epicenter of London, obviously the most expensive part, downtown area, and in general, the further away you are from the center, the cheaper the rent is, which is why I think that some of these websites have different average rents, because they're calculating based on different zones. So of course, location will change your price, and that's something that you need to make sure you have taken into consideration. It's almost like a triangle, I would say, where there's location, price, and quality or standard of living. If you want to have a really nice place but also make it like so it's really, really cheap, then you have to basically compromise on the location and live a little bit further away. If you want something that is very close to the center, a very good location, well connected, but also very, very cheap, you're gonna have to compromise on the quality of the place. You might need to live somewhere slightly more dusty, crusty. And if you want to live somewhere with a really good location and close to center, and at the same time you want it to be relatively nice, you're gonna have to rank up your price. So these 3 things are the main things I would say you have to prioritize, and one of them has to be under the other two because it's almost impossible to find all three. And that's why I say it's important to understand zones, because I've always lived in zone 2 or further out. I've never actually, oh actually no, I take that back. I did live in zone 1 when I was at London Business School, but in that case I was living in zone 1, so very close to the center. I could walk to Oxford Circus. I also had like a tight budget of like less than £900, so you know, I was paying like 800 or something. And because these two things mattered, I ended up living in a really shitty like basement apartment, even though it was in central London. I had rats in my flat, so you know, you kind of do need to compromise. And for me, I personally choose to prioritize price and standard of living. So I don't want to live in a basement. I don't want to live in some like dusty, crusty old place that, you know, has creaking floors and just, for me, like not really nice to live in. I'd rather live slightly like away from the center, zone 2 or maybe even zone 3, and pay a better price and still have a very nice flat, which is what I currently have at the moment. And a lot of people think it's like, oh, like I have to live in zone 1. There's no way I can't live in zone 1. But personally, I don't even feel like I'm missing out on anything by living in zone 2 or zone 3. So that's something that I would say try to understand a little bit more and try to explore your options before deciding, oh, zone 1 is the only zone for me. The next thing I want to talk about is timeline. So when should you start looking at houses in London and flats, etc.? And I would say that the housing market in London actually moves incredibly fast. So when I want to look for flats to move into, I usually start looking 1 to 2 months in advance, because if I start looking 6 months in advance, it's not going to be relevant to me, because I'm going to find something I like and they're looking for someone to move in immediately or within at least the next month. So it's really not going to be worth you looking that much far ahead. If you're an experienced renter, then I'll say just 1 month in advance even, or like 5 to 6 weeks in advance is more than enough, especially if you know what you want. So yes, that's the timeline that I would personally suggest, but of course everyone has a different comfort level, so make sure that you're comfortable with, you know, doing things a little bit last minute, because that's just how the housing market works almost. Another tip that I have for you guys when it comes to flat hunting in London is definitely keep everything in a spreadsheet. It's going to help you a ton, and I personally have always used a spreadsheet to keep track of my housing experiences. I'll have like maybe like 5 main columns, obviously one with the link to the flats, one with the location, maybe one with the zone, another one with the price. And it's really important to also have another column to check the status. So have you contacted, have you heard back, have you scheduled the viewing, and have you done the viewing? And that's going to really help you keep track of all the flats, because they're so, like, the housing market, as I mentioned, moves so fast, and which it makes it really hard to keep track of things. And sometimes you send out emails, send out voicemails, and you start losing track as to like which agent is, you know, representing which flats and which ones have I already contacted, which ones I'm waiting a reply on. So having everything on a spreadsheet really made it easier for me, makes the whole thing a lot more manageable. So if you're not doing that already, then make sure you have a spreadsheet for when you start flat hunting. Another tip that I have for you guys is sometimes when the housing market is just moving so fast and you guys cannot find something that you like, or anytime you find something you like, it's gone within the next day because people have already picked it up, I would say start looking on the agency websites before you start looking on like rental marketplaces like Zoopla or Gumtree or Spare Room. Start looking on agency websites first and then go onto the marketplaces, because the way the business model works is a landlord will get an agency to rent out the flat. The agency will then advertise this flat to be able to find a tenant, you know? If they can't find a tenant via their own platform, then they will list it on marketplaces like Zoopla and Rightmove, because there's obviously a lot more reach and these websites have a way bigger audience. So they list it on these websites instead, but when they list it on marketplaces, they need to usually pay a little bit of commission, or I'm actually not 100% sure how it works, but I'm sure that somehow they have to pay to list their property. So the margins are probably a lot higher when they find tenants based on their own websites, and therefore they tend to list, you know, good flats on their own website first. So if you're having a huge, you know, conundrum trying to find flats because they keep on going away so quickly, then instead of using marketplaces, try to use agency websites first. That's a really good tip that I have for you guys. Okay, so you found a place, you like it, you move in. Please, for the love of God, do one thing for me, just one thing. And I'll give you guys this one tip and I'll end the video. But when you move in, take pictures of every single thing you see, every single corner, like any scratch on the wall, any dirt that you see, anything that you feel like is broken, just take a picture of it. Even if the agency or the landlord has already done an inventory report for you, still take pictures of every single thing and upload it onto your Google Drive, because if you upload it there, there'll be a date stamped on it and a proof that you uploaded it on the day you moved in, or at least the week you moved in. And having this folder, this Google Drive, is going to be such an asset to you in the future when landlords try to bite you in the ass and try to not return your deposit because for some reason you're accountable for these things that were already there before. But if you have photographed proof and it's dated as well, you can use it against them. And this is something that has saved me so much money, like thousands of pounds almost, because landlords just tend to be assholes sometimes and they want to, you know, make you pay for things that are not your fault. And sometimes the inventory report will not cover everything and it won't be exhaustive. And if you don't take pictures yourself, you'll kind of be left in a really sticky situation, because of course the landlord oftentimes has more power than the tenant. So make sure that you take pictures of everything, okay? If the walls have a bit of scratches on them, take a picture of every single scratch you can find, because who knows, you might move out and the landlord might be like, oh, we need to repaint the place because of you, so you need to pay for the painting fee now. Speaking from personal experience. So yes, that is actually the most important tip I can give you guys once, you know, the flat hunting process is done, is to make sure you take pictures and have your own proof, and make sure that you have your own back covered, because no one else will try to cover for you. This video is getting kind of long, so I'll keep it at that. But let me know if you guys want any of these other tips that I have, because there's a bunch of them and they're just all scattered around in my brain. I might just make a couple of TikToks. That might be a bit easier, but you guys don't follow me there. So let me know if you'd rather me just film a YouTube video with random tips and tricks to share with you guys when it comes to flat hunting and just renting in London in general. And yeah, hopefully this video was useful, and let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments below, and please do not forget to like and subscribe as always. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.